Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's show with the co-founder and CTO of Hohxhunt, Pyry Åvist, who will be discussing his groundbreaking research into agentic AI for spear phishing. Pyry, it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thanks, Elliot. Super excited to be here today and talk about all things AI in social engineering.
Pyry is a little bit too modest to tell you all, but Pyry is perhaps the world's leading authority on spear phishing and AI and phishing in general. So this is going to be a really important webinar for everybody. But before we get into the webinar itself, a little bit of housekeeping. The webinar will be recorded. You can use the Q&A feature to ask questions, which we will try to answer in the chat. And if you have any remaining questions, please ask them to us at hohxhunt.com or reach out to Pyry or myself personally over LinkedIn. So introductions, my name is Elliot Baker. For those of you who have not met me before, and I'm the Director of Content Marketing here at Hohxhunt. But more importantly, this is Pyry Åvist, the co-founder and CTO of Hohxhunt. Pyry, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks again, and hello to everyone listening this. So super excited to share some of our research into the topic and discuss how we have approached the use of AI in helping our customers. As a little bit of background, the original thesis of Hohxhunt as a company was on how to use machine learning and AI in helping to educate our users. And this has been in the very core of the company from the beginning. The method has just evolved. And now with the advent of large language models, we're only getting more capabilities. So it's very exciting times.
Yeah, it's a really important point too, Pyry. We were just over in RSA and virtually every single booth there had the two letters slapped on their booth saying AI. But I think it's really important to remember that automation is not necessarily AI or whatever other kind of a smart feature you have. And the fact that Hohxhunt was designed as an AI native platform is a really important distinction about this entire experience you get when you use Hohxhunt.
Absolutely.
So just to remind you, the research that this webinar is based off of is available online at hohxhunt.com/blog/AI powered phishing versus humans. And in today's show, we will be discussing the past, present, and future of AI and phishing and agentic AI in general and cybersecurity. So let's just dive into it. The basic thesis that this research has brought up is that AI makes both personalized coaching easy and spear phishing the new normal. Now, Pyry, years ago, when you first started doing your research into AI, right around, if not the same month as when ChatGPT 3.0 was first released, you said AI can be used for good or for evil. And how is that piece of wisdom bearing out today?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm the origin of that wisdom, but like every new technology, very often you have these dual purposes for it. So in specific context of the large language models, you can use it to create new beautiful things, as we have seen, ranging from beautiful pictures to different applications on the defense side, but equally that can be used for more nefarious purposes. Whatever is a tool, it can be a tool for the good persons and also for the bad persons. So in regards of the AI, as these models are very great at human communication, and the context we are operating, social engineering, which is all about human communications, it's very easy to see how these models can be used for, of course, creating really personalized training content in the task of security awareness, but also really believable spear phishing attacks, whether those are meant for training or those can be, of course, used by the bad actors in task of actually phishing people.
Yeah, very well said. And I think this image kind of emphasizes the point you just made. You know, phishing is evolving. So if your training is not, then you're probably falling behind.
Absolutely.
So let's go take a look at the landscape as it stands with phishing in the age of AI. So just the cost of phishing go up every single year. And these are primarily from the IBM Ponemon report on the cost of data breaches. So 68% of breaches contain the human element from the Verizon DBIR. 80 to 95% of cyber attacks begin with a phish. That is from the Comcast Business Cybersecurity Threat Report. $4.88 million is the average cost of a phishing breach. That's from IBM and Ponemon. And this figure is from SlashNext. There has been about a 4,151% increase in total phishing volume since the advent of ChatGPT in November of 2022. Does not necessarily mean that all of those phish that have been created by AI specifically. They have not all been written by AI or agents or anything like that, but the volume has increased at that time. So it is a pretty startling number. And on the other side of that, again, good, bad. There's different uses of any kind of technology. Good training is good for business. This is also from the IBM Ponemon report, and there is a significant difference that you will find in the costs of phishing breaches and phishing in general when you look at the difference between a low level of employee training and a high level of employee training. The breaches are going to be $5.18 million when you have a low level of employee training, as opposed to $3.68 million when you have a high level of employee training. And this is sort of another part that I want to ask you about, Pyry, because what we found in our research, and it's not perfect, but it's roughly about what other people have been saying, is that most of the attacks that slip past filters, and that's a very crucial part of this, those are the ones that get past the filters and actually land in inboxes. Most of them are still written by humans. They're still the kinds that come from the same phishing kits that have been available on the dark web for some time. Perhaps those go through some kind of improvements that are iterative, but they're not necessarily being written by AI. So most attacks are still written by humans. Can you explain to us, Pyry, what is happening with the adoption rate of AI created and AI agent created emails, phishing emails on the dark web?
Yeah, this is quite interesting data. And I think every industry, and if you think about the social engineering and phishing as a service industry, it has its life cycles where there's a new technology. It will take some time, even for the bad actors to adapt. What this data tells me is that these people or entities that do these attacks, they are not stupid. They are driving this as a business, and they're using tools that are the most effective to get the goal done. And so from this, we can conclude that still you get great results with just the basic phishing kits. So that's why there hasn't been maybe a forceful reason to actually move away from them altogether. But we are, of course, seeing slower increase of using AI as a tool in the phishing side as well. And where I think the AI will be the most effective is this in doing this more large scale spear phishing attacks, where typically a spear phishing attack to a single organization might require an adversary to actually do reconnaissance and spend time to target that one organization or even that one individual. With AI, you can do that at scale. So we are going to see that. So it's similarly with the AI in, let's say, just the normal day-to-day use in any enterprise. We are not 100% there, or even maybe 20% or even 10% there. Similarly here. So we are seeing the increase of AI usage, and it's only going to get more and more prevalent as these tools become more available. And also when these tools, let's say open source models, become more available and it's the computing improves, so that using these open source models in a, let's say, outside of cloud vendor monitoring becomes more easier for these adversaries, we're going to see these numbers rise.
And how about this as far as one of the motivating factors that might make those numbers rise? So you were saying that those traditional phishing kits are still working quite well. But what are we seeing here? There was a real watershed moment that happened in March of 2025. We've called it internally the Skynet Moment for Agentic AI.
Yeah,
Explain a little bit. We'll skip ahead a little bit to talk about what happened here.
Yeah. So maybe a little bit of background here. So When we founded Hohxhunt, of course, at that time, we didn't yet have these large language models at our disposal. And what we had to build is that we built this really smart engine that can basically understand based on the end user's role and their location and other facts that what are their weaknesses and skills, and we could then automatically train on those weaknesses. And especially when we see the users reacting to different attacks, we could send them, let's say, harder phishing attacks or easier phishing attacks, etc. But those attacks have always been based on this template that we internally, we have this dedicated team that creates them. They're like amazing team of people. They only live to create phishing attacks. So they're really good at creating different level of phishing attacks. So they don't only create like the hardest ones, but they know how to create, for example, when we want to teach new employees about the tactics of social engineering, like you want to start with something easier. So they know the whole landscape. And then of course we use real attacks we see from our networks. So we started doing these evaluations from the very first time the first large language models became available, where we basically took this benchmark task that we gave our human, this amazing red team we were talking, that based on this prompt, create as hard phishing attack you can create. And basically we used that same prompt with AI to create a similar attack. And then we started comparing basically like the performance of the AI in the task of that phishing versus humans. And when we did this first, the human created attacks were in terms of achieving a higher failure rate with the target audience, where we tested these with over 50,000 simulations. And I have to highlight one part. I might be humble about myself, but I'm not humble about the work we do at Hohxhunt. So this is probably one of the largest these research cases done regards of AI. Typically, you see a lot of great studies in universities, but the challenge with the universities when they're doing studies related to this, that they might have like 200 students recruited for a study. We can do this at scale with the millions of users we have. So this study was actually just a few weeks long. We got 50,000 samples over 100 countries. And at that time, humans were still better than the AI. And now if we go back to the Skynet moment you mentioned, that was the moment when the performance of the AI overcome the humans. So the AI was able to create at scale attacks that achieved similar or higher failure rates as the humans. And we have to remember, these are not just any humans we're comparing against. These are people who have worked on this topic for several years. They have created hundreds of simulations, and each one of them, they have a lot of experience. They have done this at scale with the millions of enterprise users we have. So this is not the average human from the street create a phishing attack. These are really expert humans compared to the AI.
Yeah, excellent points. These are elite red teamers, and these are also elite users as well. If you look at the x-axis on the bottom, the way that the AI is performing against the human red teamers is based upon the amount of training that these different users have had. And typically the AI would do pretty well, right, against the novice users, and then the human red teamers would outfish the AI pretty significantly as against the more skilled users.
I'm just like going back to the point that you mentioned about the training piece, and here you can see that in effect that if we look at the time in training, more time in the training, the smaller the failure rate is, and that is across whether it's human or AI created attack. So once again, Element proved that even though this AI is getting more effective, having that training under your belt for our users, those ones that have been in the platform for a longer time, been exposed to different tactics in a safe environment, reduces that likelihood of them clicking on and falling for a phishing attack, whether the creator of that attack is a human targeting them or it's an AI creating that attack.
Yeah, that's an absolutely critical point. And now for our audience here, maybe this is a good opportunity when you look at the methodology overview. And I don't know if we need to go through every point of this, but it might be helpful to explain the difference between a single prompt AI and how that differs from an AI agent and what's going on there.
Yeah, I think the key difference here is that this is of course terminology that is still so new in the industry, not only in like cybersecurity, but in all industries. What is agent? What is agentic workflow? what is single prompt kind of approach. But I think the key here for us is that it needs to be iterative and learn from I would say the kind of, it makes an action and then that action has some kind of consequence in real life. And then the agent learns from that and you're going to run this loop. And that's something that in a way have been in our platform from the very beginning. As I said in the early, that we didn't have such an intelligent kind of AI. We had what you would call more of a machine learning type of approach, where we would basically we would have some assumption about the user. We would send certain attacks we think are fit for new users. And based on the user reactions, we would adapt the training to match the user's perceived skill level. And that actually works really well. We have gotten the best results in the industry in terms of reducing failure rate and increasing user engagement. And now we're just like replacing that decision with a very intelligent frontier model. And we can give that frontier model so much context about the user and then give the agent tools to create an attacks that fit the target. And the target is not always especially when we talk about, in this study, it's about failure rate. But when we talk about actually using this in our product, which we actually rolled this out to our customers and it's in real life use, is that it's not about making the user to fail. It's about making the user stronger and increasing the likelihood when the real attack comes that they will not fall for the attack, but actually report it. So the agent might actually has a little bit more kind of goals than just failing. It's about like finding the right topic to teach the user to reduce that likelihood. But I don't want to go too deep here, but in the study, we basically had, if you go one slide still back, we had like 2 tasks which we were comparing, either like improving an existing simulation. So let's say taking an existing simulation and saying that, hey, make this more fitting for this user, or then just creating a novel simulation out of scratch so that, okay, create a new type of attack for this end user.
So you create the agent, and then things really started to happen. So again, the single prompt was from about a year before in 2023. And now look what's happening in 2024 and then 2025. So maybe take us through what's going on here.
Yeah, so in a very nutshell, that AI is getting better. So this is driven by a couple of things. One is that our capabilities, our evals, our prompting techniques are getting better, but also the AI models, the frontier models we're using under the hood are getting better. And I think how we have built our strategy in terms of like AI and helping our customers, that we want to always have a place where when these models gets better, that they become more intelligent, they add reasoning capabilities, our product becomes better for our customers so that it's more capable of training the end user with the edge type of attacks that might be out there. So our core promise to our customers is always that we train your end users, we expose them to the hardest types of attacks we see out there. Of course, taking into account that if it's a new user, we take them there in that space gradually. So now we are in this space that this amazing innovation, the billions that are being poured into the development of these frontier models, when they get better, our training agents get better. And this is just a proof of it. So just by the models getting better and our prompting a little bit increasing, the outcome was that the AI is becoming more and more effective and surpassed humans in the spring of 2025.
And so just a couple of follow-ups on that. Number one, it's remarkable how much of an improvement that the AI agents made just from November into March. Like that's not that long of a time, but there is a significant improvement. And the other point I would also make here too is that when someone is trained on the very latest attacks, these attacks are evolving so fast now, things are changing so quickly, that this does ensure that the people who are actually receiving those attacks become an active part of your defense system. And I think that's a critical point you made there.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, the difference here is that you could have this human hacker that is just focusing on one of your employees or one person, that how would I what would be the best attacks to send that person? Let's say for you, Elliot, that adversary would look at your LinkedIn, would look at your online presence, would look at some news from your company and find a good hook, certain behavior hook that he thinks or that is the most likely to get you to, for example, click the link, download or something, or whatever the goal of that adversary is. Now with the AI, you can do that at scale. And the difference there is that we have already seen this work at scale, even with the current training methods. Now the training, I think, becomes even more important, that we use the same AI to actually train and expose users to these spear phishing level tactics that normally they might not even see, because those might be, it used to be that those were reserved for the high value targets. But in the future, if that percentage what you saw in the beginning, the amount of like AI used in the attacks keeps increasing, the default difficulty, the default level of attack is a spear phishing level attack. And you need this level of training to prepare the users for that.
Yeah, absolutely critical point. Spear phishing has now become the new normal. The fact that with a scalable spear phishing agent, that you can have these highly personalized attacks at scale anywhere in the world. I think that the point you just made, that you also need to have highly personalized training that's going to help people recognize and report the very latest types of attacks and make that training relevant to them. The type of attacks that they're seeing is absolutely crucial. And just a quick recap on the numbers that the AI itself has had associated with its progress and its success. I think the key point here is that since that first 2023 experiment you had, Pyry, is that there was a 55% improvement AI relative to human. And that's dramatic. And again, these are elite red team humans. They're also improving their game all the time as well. It's harder to capture how elite human red teams are improving their game, but it's like an elite basketball team. They're constantly shooting 3-pointers, getting better at 3-pointers. They're constantly working on their jumping and their lateral movements. So I think that's a really important point. And now we're going to round into the discussion phase of this here. So what's next? Agentic AI is here, and just kind of hammer home that point. So this is a finding that you and your team arrived at. What does this have to do with the threat landscape? If you're able to do this, you're extremely talented people, very brilliant people, but you're not a nation state. You don't have a whole nation state backing to what you're doing here. You're creating this AI agent in-house. So you've proven something that can happen. What does that mean for the threat landscape?
Yeah, so I would assume, and we're seeing already open source tools regarding this, and this is in flux. So what an agent would mean, that agent would be this very typical, like a single task, almost like a single workflow thing that you do. An agentic system or AI would be more of a thing that you can give a target, and then that system has set of tools, and then it would have a higher degree of autonomy to execute against that goal. So I think what we're going to first, of course, see is this more of a use of these single agentic type of things, that the fish kits will be more that you still set them to create an attack, and then you might like link some data to it that, okay, this is the company name, go and use some OSINT tool to gather some target data about the company or the users, and then create an attack. Agentic AI would be more of a thing that you provide the tools, the way to collect data, the way to send attacks, the way to create landing pages or websites, and then give it goals that it would autonomously try to decide when and how it would phish individuals. And these might be in the realm of possibility. And in terms of technology, nothing is stopping you from creating these. And then if you take up another angle, is the increase of the AI's capability to do programming, so to say vibe coding. So you don't even need to be this expert programmer to create agentic systems. So it wouldn't be very hard. I would say it's a weekend project of creating your own agentic rudimentary phishing system. So these things will evolve, and we'll see evolving quite rapidly. So the defenses must evolve quite rapidly at the same time. So both on the filtering layer, so that our filtering technology must become smarter But then we also need to evolve the human layer and prepare them for this.
Speaking of the human layer and preparing them for this, is there enough time? So you've had this finding, AI is clearly capable of outfishing even elite red teams. Do we have time to prepare? And what does that look like in terms of resilience?
I think the perfect time to prepare was yesterday. The next perfect time is now. So I do think we have time. As you saw from the numbers, there's still a lot to do. Still, the basic phishing kits are effective. So it's this threat isn't a new one. It's just evolving. And as with social engineering, there's never a point in time where you couldn't start preparing for that. It's just that we're in the ecosystem as a vendor, but all of us in this ecosystem of helping to defend our users and our companies, we need to evolve, and it's on us to ensure that as the adversaries keep using these tools, we evolve our capabilities as well.
Yeah, well said. And I was having a conversation a little while ago, and we were talking about how AI has been this long coming existential threat to our security. And it made me think of the Three Little Pigs fairy tale, and how you have AI as like the big bad wolf. And you had the pig that made a house out of straw, one that made it out of wood, one that made it out of brick. And we all know the story. And I think at this point, if you aren't making your house out of brick, which is going to be AI bricks, then you're probably going to get your house blown down. So there is time to make a house out of brick here. And if you look at the results from Hohxhunt training, people typically will have these dramatic turnarounds within 3 to 6 months. So while the disruption to the AI threat landscape will happen, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's a year, maybe it's 2 to 5 years, we'll see. But there is still time if you implement good training.
Absolutely. And I can just say from our technology and product team perspective, we are putting all in, and we are making sure that we are ready and that our customers are ready for this. This is not just like some research we're doing. These are our core features we have implemented into our products and continue to implement. And that's part of our product philosophy, that research drives the product. And as we do this, these are not just like interesting demos, but we do this in a way that we can then provide end-to-end capability, whether it's using AI for training, or whether it's using AI for defense, or using AI for triage, or AI for hunting threats, that those are available in the product. And we are putting everything in line to ensure that we move fast and are ready to help our customers in this.
Yeah, absolutely. Research and data driven. It's in the DNA of this whole platform, this whole company. And that's why I love working here. There's real scientific power behind everything that happens. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of today's webinar. Pyry, it's been a pleasure doing the show with you. It's been a pleasure reading over your research and communicating that to the world. I would encourage anyone to ask. If we haven't answered your questions here in the chat, please do ask them now and submit them to us. And any final thoughts, Pyry?
No, I think this has been absolutely great. Thanks, Elliot, for doing this. And hopefully people have questions. If not, you can find me in typical sources. Always happy to have a discussion around these topics and hear our customers or people in the space, their thoughts and observation on this. So, and also interested in collaboration if that's something that interests some listeners on in terms of like studies, etc. So thanks from my side as well.
Fantastic. Okay, well, with that, we will bid you adieu. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks.